14-year-old throwing tantrum is going to be, 10 times X of the 7-year-old tantrum. And I believe that, if we don't really evolve as a parent too. So I think we understand, respect the boundaries, respecting that they're also turning into an adult and they're trying to find themselves, trying to identify themselves as they're growing up, finding their identity, that we just need to guide them and coach them from there.
Yeah. Welcome to the Biz Dad podcast. My name is Adam Labar. I am interviewing today Hendra. I did not ask you how to pronounce your last name. That was great of me beforehand. How do you actually pronounce your last name so I don't jack it up?
Tambunan.
Tambunan. Okay. That's pretty much what it looks like. Yeah. All right. So Hendra Tambunan. I am super excited to chat with him. He is a fellow real estate investor and a Christian. So I think we're going to have a lot to be able to talk about. So that said, Hendra, if you can, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about who you are, who your family is, a little bit about your business, and then we'll go from there.
Yep. Well, thanks for having me, Adam. My name's Hendra Tambunan. I'm originally from Indonesia. I came to the United States as a foreign student when I was after finishing high school, and went to San Francisco State, live in the Bay Area, and then pretty much been living there since then. I'm married, and then with my wife for almost 25 years now, and with one wife and one kid. Is a 15-year-old, going to be turning into 16. He's a sophomore in high school. Yeah, nice. And I do real estate investing. So what you said, even though I still have a W-2 job, that's the side hustle like everybody's doing in the real estate investing that I'm really passionate about. And I think more than real estate investing itself, I consider myself as have an entrepreneurial itch that just want to continue just like finding things. What's next? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a similar. I was always looking for what was next, even when I was in the military. I bounced multiple jobs in the military. I was like, I want to do this, and I became good at that. I was like, okay, I want to do this, and I became good at that. I could never stop that itch, And now even that I'm out and I've got multiple business stuff going on, it's just the same thing. So I completely understand and respect that. What's your W-2 right now?
So I'm actually a technology consultant, though. So if you're familiar with like this CRM named Salesforce, that's what I do. Uh-huh. I've been pretty much just like throughout my career, that's what I do, like a CRM consulting, implementing CRM for many enterprise businesses. Yeah.
Well, you're doing the right business now too, because there's plenty of people inside of real estate that really love to have a good CRM. So that's awesome.
That's really true. Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, so married, one kid, 25 years. That's phenomenal. I especially nowadays, looking at the way that marriages go, I'm always happy to talk to people who've been married for a long time, and that are pushing through any of because we all know life's challenges are going to come at us regardless. So, but pushing through and actually saying, you know what, we can face these challenges together, and we're going to be a much stronger team doing it. So, I'll probably ask you a few questions about that because I'm at half of that right now at 13 years. So, I've got a lot of growing to be able to do. So I look forward to hearing a bit more about that. But I want to rewind. You said you immigrated here after high school, so 17, 18 years old. Tell me about what it was like before that, growing up in Indonesia. Tell me about your family, your parents, and how what was life growing up in Indonesia.
So, yeah, just like a typical family. A little bit sad about my dad. My dad was born and raised in eastern part of Java, though, and then when he was pretty young, almost like 22 years old, he was being sent by his dad, which is my grandpa, to capital city of Jakarta. That's how he knows, my mom and get married. I was born and raised in Jakarta since then. So with that kind of mindset, though, I think he instilled to me, like, don't be afraid to hustle. Because when he moved from, small city and then to big city, he just pretty much just opened up the way. He become like a trailblazer for his family. He try everything, make things work so he can open up, the way for the rest of my grandpa family to move, like including all of his younger siblings, right? So he pretty much put a value, some type of value in me. Basically said like, hey, everything can be done as long as you hustle. I mean, obviously, we used the word hustle. He said, like, hey, 1% talent, the remaining is just your hard work, pretty much. So he always reminded me of that one, like, hey, your talent doesn't mean anything unless you put the work into it. And that kind of the value that always motivate me and challenge me when I'm growing up, like, you got to keep trying. So that kind of mindset, that value that he planted in my life and also in my siblings' life since the beginning, since we're very young.
Awesome. Yeah, that I forgot who it was that said success is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, right? So very similar. Like it takes it's a lot of hard work to get to do that. So so your grandpa, did you say sent your dad to Jakarta?
That's right. Yeah.
So with the goal of planting some roots so the rest of the family can come?
Exactly. Yep.
Man, all right. So what did that look like? Why did your grandpa choose to do that, and why your dad versus? I mean, you said he had other siblings versus any other sibling.
I think just finding a better life, though. I never got a chance to ask my grandpa or my dad like why, but I'm pretty sure that I think given that back in the 70s, 80s, Jakarta is becoming like a lot of opportunity, like the biggest city in Indonesia back then is more developed rather than the rest of the city in the country. So obviously it's a lot more opportunity to open up a business, for doing trades. Given that you grew up in a smaller city, then you don't have to given the opportunity, because back in the 70s in Indonesia, especially in Asia, it's pretty true that the development is not really, it's just well distributed all throughout the nation, just like what United States seeing.
Okay.
So
awesome. Yeah,
it's very concentrated in Jakarta in this case. So obviously there's better opportunity.
Okay, very good. So what did your dad decide to do then when he was setting the roots in and building it out? What was it that he did in Jakarta?
Well, believe it or not, I mean, the first thing I did is just basically just work for somebody else. I mean, and I thought like when working for somebody else, like going to be like an employee, but he actually started from like literally just doing physical labor too. I mean, when you're 22 years old, he was, he just knowing someone and then just working in hard labors, doing, lifting up he worked one of the stationery stores, just packing stuff, packaging, delivery and things like that. I mean, if you think about it, that's just pretty hard labor, given that you're 21, 22 years old. The only family, pretty much the only person in the family that live over there, you got nobody else to turn to. So he's willing to hustle for that kind of effort.
That's awesome. And then what, as you were growing up, kind of what is that mostly what he was doing, or what did he ended up establishing after that, as you were growing up?
So, and then he started looking into a few more businesses, and he ended up becoming like a distributor for one of the industrial yarn company in Surabaya, which is the city that he was born and raised, and then pretty much just become like a distributor to all the manufacturing, shoe manufacturing, cement manufacturing throughout Indonesia. So it evolved, obviously, from there.
Okay, that's cool. So as you were growing up, how did the conversation come up to say, "Hey, let's"? I want to go to America to go to school. How did that kind of conversation come up? Was it your idea, their idea?
It's a little bit of both. I think obviously after he knows like what he's been through, he obviously as a good dad, he's like, I don't want you to go experience what I experienced. I think what I experienced just because I'm lack of education, I'm not really good enough trade. So I want you to obviously go in for the higher learning and let's think about what next step. And obviously also I'm looking to study overseas because that's going to be a better opportunity for me to expand and go from there. So it's become like a mutual decision. Like I'm going to be going to school overseas and then expand and then obtain a degree overseas.
Okay.
But knowing that, my dad is also like, hey, knowing my personality, he knows from the beginning, like if I'm going to send my son to overseas, there's very little chance he's going to be coming back to Indonesia. And that's what he knows, pretty much from the beginning. That's what I'm going to end up staying over here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's one of those that you always could hope, but your dad looking. I mean, I don't want you to experience what I experienced, right? That being the thing that says, "Hey, I'm going to drive this forward." Like I would imagine that brought, and correct me if I'm wrong, brought some joy in his life, like a little bit of solace, right? Knowing that the solace meaning, like you were probably not coming back, but man, he's going to be doing something that I would have never been capable of doing. Like, how many times have you guys chatted about that afterwards? Like, especially later on in life, or was that not really something that ever came up?
Not really something that came up though, but I remember that you know, he obviously visited me after after a few years I've been at the States, got a chance. When we bought a house that I'm living right now, I was able to invite him over, and then just looking at it, I know that he just finding a joy. I mean, typical Asian family, he never said like, "Hey, I love you," I never really care about you, but you can see the immense joy, that unspeakable joy. Like, hey, I'm glad that I sent you over here, and I'm really proud what you did.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would imagine that it would be like just an overjoyous moment, and like you said, like typical Asian family, they'll probably kept it all inside and like, yep, stern face still, and just, but man, that's got to feel good. So good for you, man. That's awesome. And to me, I mean, that's I am still, whether it's a popular opinion or not, still a firm believer that America is by far like that country that people want to go to get a better life, to strive for something better. And I want us to always be that place that we're able to bring people in and give them a better life than that they would have had and where they're from. As somebody from another country, I'm sure you could respect and understand, what it's like to be in other countries. And as somebody who's been around all over the world, I definitely see the value of this country and what it can bring to folks. Now, San Francisco, I'm not sure I see the value in that at the moment, but I would love to learn a little bit more about your thoughts there. But yeah, San Francisco scares me right now on what that has been turning into. But man, oh man.
I think we are on the same page. We share the same opinion about how for the time being. Yes.
I could really hope that could change, because I'm told that it's used to be just like such an amazing city, and I wish I would have gone back when it was. But now it seems to be somewhere like there's no way that I would want to bring my family to come visit in San Francisco. Like I don't know it like the back of my hand, like you probably do, on where to go and where not to go. But man, oh man, it seems that it's been a rough place to the last few years. So.
Yeah.
All right. So raising kids over there, we'll kind of go back into that. You have a 15-year-old kid going into, you said sophomore, is a sophomore now?
He's a sophomore right now. Yeah.
All right. What does he think of dad and America and what he's got going on? Have you kind of chatted with him a little bit about? I mean, I'm assuming you have, about what it was like for you growing up compared to him, or how's that sort of conversation going?
So obviously, I've been, trying to rehash what I learned from my dad, right? The upbringing, and sometimes it went really well, and when it clicks, when you have like the moment that he's opening up, and you can just connect, and he's just like open up, like tell me more, and you just want to dive into it. There's also the time that it doesn't click, like, hey, you live in a different era, like this doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta learn, obviously, try to connect and find that moment, and then be always ready, especially in the teenager, right? I mean, I remember that one time that I was picking up, and this was middle school a few years ago, and I picking up from school. I just simply was like trying to strike a conversation. Are you hungry? Like, no. Do you want to eat? Not really. Like, you want to get a cheesesteak? Sure. Okay. And then the moment we step into the cheesesteak store, he just like opened it up. Have you ever heard about the cryptocurrency and so forth? And just like open it up. He's just like a totally different person. And I thought like maybe because he was hungry, but no, he wasn't even hungry. I just like, I don't know what happened. He's just caught in the moment, like just like click. And then that's where I can start pulling in and then engage in conversation. That's going to be a very good quality time to engage, because I mean, the time you never know when it's going to come, but especially with the teenager these days.
Yeah,
You're just going to be ready.
with a teenage boy, it's probably going to be over food. Like let's be honest. Like he's probably eats a lot. I mean, my boys already, I can't believe how much they eat. So I don't even know what I'm going to do when they're, both teenagers. But what did you find? So, how many, boy, how do I want to word this? So it was over food in this particular case that you're talking about, right? And then what did you find were since then? Have you tried to do the same thing with food or tried to do various different things? Like how have you tried to break down that barrier to have some more of those conversations?
I think the barrier, it lowers from our trip though. We recently, both of us went to a mission trip together, and then we spent 2 weeks and then, a mission trip. That's where we have nowhere else to go except a part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And we start seeing, we start seeing each other, like, our relationship, like, hey, I'm trying to help him. And then also he see me like I'm trying to guide him too. And I'm also need to learn to accept that he's a grown person that trying to mature and find his own way, because the upbringing for me, again, from the Asian culture, like this is the way it is. This is the upbringing of it. You gotta follow it. But we're in a different era that like I need to guide and coach, but let him find his own way, and then guiding him instead of like lecturing him. I think that's becoming like an aha moment to me. It's like as a father, like, I cannot dictate, but I can only guide and coach so he become a better person on his own.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's especially now at this age, like I was talking to Anthony Graff and his, I don't know when his podcast will come out, but he chatted about the age ranges. Like, when you're looking at like 0 to 5, it's a lot of that, like that bonding type of stuff. And that like, and then you're working into the discipline side of the house, and then you work into the connection side of the house, right? When you're much closer to like the 15 years of age, where, if you've missed out on the discipline and you're trying to do the discipline at 15, it's completely different. Like there's not much success in that as it is if the discipline is already established and you're having those conversations. It's a lot easier to grow that out. So I think that, especially at 15 years old, and granted, this is coming from a guy who doesn't have a 15-year-old kid, just a guy who's been 15 years old before. So take it with a grain of salt, just my thought process here. But the way I usually am trying to look at it is my kids are little businesses. And my goal as the CEO right now is to make sure that I've got at the ages they're at now, very firm, established, understanding of where this is supposed to go, good SOPs. I'm running the business the way it needs to be ran. I'm very integrated. I'm very understanding what's happening as they grow up a little bit older, become a little bit more hands off, work on the more strategic level type of stuff. I'm not in the business anymore. I'm more working on the business. And then once they are adults, like on their way out of the house, I want to be a board member. I want them to call me when there's a problem in the business, but they get to run their own business. They're now the CEOs of their own life. And I just get to be a board member. So I think at that point now, where you're more like the strategic hands of getting ready to transition to letting this person go and run their own business. And I think that's I don't know. I love every stage. But that sounds like a fun stage to me where you get to kind of run through it. So that thought process I just said, kind of let me know, walk me through what it was like growing up or raising this 15-year-old. Like where were those ups and downs? Where did you find that you should have done something a little bit sooner than you did, or some of the pitfalls that popped up? Let's kind of break through some of that.
Yeah, so I think you brought up a very good point, like the evolvement of the parenting, right? Parenting style. Because many times, like we caught up like 0 to 5. Oh, they're cute, they're adorable. But at the point, like you have to realize, like, hey, it's no longer adorable. It's no longer tolerable, right? I mean, for example, like you saw your kids like running around in the underwears, like when they're 3 years old, it's fine. It's cute, it's adorable. The moment like they become like 8 years old, you have to become like, hey, you got to put your boundaries. Like we got to evolve too. But at one point, like you got to start realizing, like, to what point that you want to educate them and coach them, or the way you interact with them need to be evolved. I mean, remember like a couple of years ago, I started telling people, my son, like, they're you evolve. I need to evolve too. But at the same time, we need to realize like things that you did when you were little is no longer becoming fun, but becoming annoying or maybe perceived like immature for some people. So that's where I can guide you, but you need to let me do it. And then you also need to be open to do that. And also you need to tell me to what degree that you want me to told you that. So that then we can help balancing on each other. Because otherwise this is going to be a war every day, right? Dealing with teenager. I've seen people like, I've seen my friend putting a Facebook post at one time like, hey, 14-year-old throwing a tantrum is going to be, 10 times X of the 7-year-old tantrum. And I believe that, if we don't really evolve as a parent too. So I think we understand, respect the boundaries, respecting that they're also turning into an adult and they're trying to find themselves, trying to identify themselves as they're growing up, finding their identity, that we just need to guide them and coach them from there.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned a couple times like the boundaries and the conversation side. When did you kind of start to realize, hey, I need to have more conversations and talk about these boundaries? When did that start to happen for you?
I attribute to my wife, because many times, like, when I'm having like a pretty heated conversation with my son, she just basically just being an observer, and then everything is done. I mean, she's the one that usually tell me like providing a feedback, and that's part of the involvement too. It's like, there are many times I'm providing feedback to her, and then she's also providing feedback to me. We help each other to grow as a parent and as a husband and wife, like how we need to grow eventually, balancing each other up. So the whole family as a unit can grow together. And in some cases, she's also the one that providing a feedback to my son when the time is right, like, hey, this is what you're trying to say, or me, sharing it to my sons, like, hey, this is what your mom meant to be, she didn't mean any harm. So I think becoming like there's also going to be another rear view mirror, just not going to be like one way. Yeah. Because I grew up in a culture that it could be one way, especially in the Asian culture. It could be like parent ways the right way, but I need to learn, like, we need to evolve and grow also in our parenting style and parenting approach.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, to me, it's extremely important for all of us to kind of look at the way we were raised, the way life is right now, and kind of assess, is the way we were raised the right way, or what can I take away from that? Like you, like instilling still, hard work and dedication. That's something that your dad was instilling in you, and obviously that's something that you want to instill in your kids. But at the sacrifice of what, right? Like we need to make sure we're not sacrificing some other, like an actual relationship with our children because of what we're trying to instill. But I think the biggest thing I wanted to harp on what you said was the communication between you and your wife. You said something, and I don't know. You could let me know if this is more, if it's very like common that you do this way, or if this is just the one time. But you had mentioned like your wife would observe, and then afterwards you guys would talk about it. Was that something you guys already like previously established? Like, hey, we're going to talk about this. And like, if there's something that needs to be discussed, it's not going to be in front of the kids. We're going to discuss it away from the kids, or how did that come out?
It's sort of like not really like we intentionally like this is what we're going to do. It's just going by default, and then it becoming a good feedback, right? I'm learning, the last few years, like a feedback is a gift, something that I have to reflect on it and grow from it. So, it could be tough to take it because you feel like, hey, this is the way I was brought up. This is the only way I know how to do it. Yeah. But at the same time, I need to see it, the positive thing out of this, and seeing for the long range, this is what is the intention, right? The intention is not going to be harming me, just for like making the family get together even closer. Yeah. And with that kind of mindset, then by default, it just evolves and then becoming more recurring these days.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that getting the feedback from your spouse is extremely important. Like for me, like, and I've said it on almost probably half the podcasts, but like God number one, wife number two, kids number 3. So if I'm not, and then anything else below, right, the business and all of the other stuff, right? So if I'm not putting God first, it's very difficult to put to take care of my wife the way I need to. If I'm not taking care of the wife the way I need to, then I'm definitely not taking care of the kids the way I need to. So having that communication between my wife and I, that's something that we actually established early on. Was we won't have disagreements about what to do with the kids in front of the kids, right? Like if I'm doing something that she doesn't agree with, she'll bring it up to me later. If she's doing something that I don't agree with, I'll bring it up later. Unless it's something like, hey, I just told the kids they can run outside and go play, and then like they start to go out, my wife's like, no, what are you doing going outside? Like, it's okay. I just told them they can run outside in the rain. It's okay. So those are like the few times it'll happen. But like if I'm overbearing on some stuff, which can happen to me. I'm a former military guy with a lot of years in service, so I could tend to be a little overbearing from time to time and raise my voice. She'll tell me afterwards, hey, I think you're doing this with the kids, and it may not even be clicking in my head, but getting that feedback, like I even wrote that down, feedback is a gift. I think that is a phenomenal way of looking at feedback, because it is a gift, and it's only a gift if we're willing to receive it and willing to actually hear it. Like too many of us, and myself included for a long time, and still sometimes depending on how the feedback is given, it will change how I receive it, of course. But man, oh man, does it make a huge difference, right, in our growth. And as when we look at it as business folks, right, like you own apartment buildings, like let's imagine 3 of your tenants showed up and said, hey, this thing is terrible in the apartment building. If you just went, no, it's not, it's my apartment building, it's awesome, you're going to be losing some tenants, right? We need to be able to receive that feedback and go, okay, whether we like the way it was said or not, like we got to receive it to be able to fix what the problems are, to be able to move forward. So I mean, to me, the wife, like having that relationship is second to none. Like, I mean, you have to have that in a solid place.
Yeah. I think, let me step back a little bit at, what you said too, because you understand that feedback is a gift, but it's also, you understand what the intention to begin with, right? Like when you're talking about your residents in your apartment complex come to you. I mean, you can say like, this is my baby, I'm going to take care of it. This is my business. This is the way I should be. But if you're really the intention, like you're serving your customer, which is your residents, then your perception is going to be different. You're trying to see it from their perspective, because you're trying to serve them rather than just like, no, this is my business. This is the way I'm supposed to run it. It's like that one too. So it always goes in hand with the feedback as a gift, and also the intention, what the motivation you're trying to do.
Yeah, for sure. And and that happens in life too, right? We need to look at what, like, not that our family is our customer, but if we look at it, like, how are they viewing this situation that I'm responding to? Exactly. Like, what is it that's actually happening? But all right. Well, speaking of the apartments, let me go into that a little bit too, and then we'll kind of pull back in. So, I think I've got here that 2019 is when you started kind of doing apartment buildings. Is that right?
Yep. That's right.
So how did you go from doing Salesforce stuff to, you know what, I think I want to buy an apartment building?
So, I actually was part of the .com and then era that went bust many years ago. Start looking into businesses, and and then eventually I stumbled into Robert Kiyosaki book, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad. Start buying a turnkey, single family home. It just basically is nice. Like, you got a cash flow, but if you're doing it every 3 years to buy another, turnkey out of state, that's going to be a little bit challenging. And then about 5 years ago or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I was actually working for IBM, so I traveled quite a bit, Monday to Thursday. I started getting really tired of traveling, and my wife was working, operating a restaurant too. She worked on a weekend, so we don't really have a good quality family time, given that I travel on weekdays, home on weekend, and she has to work on weekend, so, and plus with our 11-year-old son, the good quality time is almost, as a family, is never achieved. Sunday we go to church and pretty much the whole day already spent there as we are volunteering. So we started getting a burnout, looking more businesses, and every time we turn around, it's always going to be going back to real estate. And then I got an aha moment. I was like reading, one of the Will Bear Profit books. Like, hey, we got like one unit is going to be like a few $100. So if we get like multiple units, then it's going to be easier, right? Start looking into it. And as we were reading the book, we just realized like this is a business that we actually can do. So we don't have to go far out of the tangent that we already did. And that's how we start jumping into multifamily, though. Start shifting our portfolio from single family and then jumping into multifamily after that.
Awesome. Yeah. So what was your first deal like then with that transition?
It's actually our first deal was actually owning 348 units in Dallas, though. Yeah. Just like a proximity, right? I mean, you and I are in the same mastermind. When I joined that mastermind, I got connected from a network of people. That's how I got introduced when the team acquired that 348 units. I mean, for us, like, it was pretty daunting here, like 348 units. It's a first deal, but that's the power of proximity when you work together as a team to take that massive deals. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we often say in that multifamily is a team sport, and golly, is it ever a team sport, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of people that they feel daunted by just the fact of buying one house, right? But yet it's relatable. They're like, okay, I understand buying a house because a lot of people buy houses, and I live in a house, so I can understand it. But buying an apartment building, like when I lived in apartment buildings, it never clicked in my head that, wow, somebody owns this apartment building, right? When I lived in a house, I talked to the owner, like it made sense. When I lived in an apartment building, I just talked to somebody who had me fill out an application, and then I moved in, So like it just was never one of those things that clicked in my head, like, wow, somebody actually owns these. It wasn't until, just like you, I started listening to a lot of those things and listening to Jake and Gino, and that I was like, wow, that guy's one of those guys that owns those apartment buildings that I lived in, like I didn't know this was possible. So it's like, what a mind altering thing, right? Because my first deal was a 62 unit, and most people are like, what? But I had never even bought a single family house as a investment property. So, but no, that's awesome. So, what kind of work did it take convincing your wife to jump into 348 units?
It's actually, she was never interested in real estate, though, to be honest, though. She was just like, hey, I trust you. As long as we're not losing money, then I'm happy, right? So, and then when she could probably just get tired and then of doing that, operating a restaurant on the weekend, she got to burn out. One thing I asked her, like, hey, I want you to read this book, Wheelbarrow Profit Book by Jake and Gino. Read it. And to my surprise, she read it over the weekend. And then maybe just like that clicked just because of Gino used to be a chef at a restaurant. And that clicking to her, just the Monday morning, I remember that she just told me, like, I like the idea. Let's do it. I said, like, what? What happened? I'm just like, I'm ready. Like, let's do it. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, like, are you serious? Like, yeah, let's sign up, and let's join Jake and Gino and go from there.
That's awesome.
And so since then, she's actually, I asked her to quit her restaurant business, and then she became an asset manager. So we got a few JV deals close under our belt right now since she's asset managing those deals. So that's pretty much, that's been less convincing just reading a book over a weekend. That's what happened.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, it was. I think that if I were to guess, though, that probably stems also from the fact that you guys had a trusting relationship already, and you guys had good communication. Because that's something you mentioned. Like, she's always kind of trusted you in doing that. So, how much would you say that it was the book, and how much would you say that, like, you guys have? Let me rephrase this question, because that could go, like, I might be leading that question. So, how have your guys' communication skills been over the years, and how have you helped them evolve? We've already talked a little bit about that, but the communication between you and your wife over the last 25 years, how has that evolved, and where would you say that has failed miserably for you, and where has it gotten a lot better for you?
It's obviously it's growing because, I've been knowing her like almost 3 decades now, actually more than 3 decades now, right? Because I'm knowing her since high school, pretty much. Like I told you before, like I probably, spend more time with my wife more than my parents because I'm coming as a foreign student over here in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So it evolved. We create a role of engagement, right? And we know that every time we there's a trust that we keep building, and the trust growing stronger over time. At least from my perspective, even that, hey, I'm traveling, I'm on the road, as a consultant, that's what I do. There's going to be some level of trust needed, because not knowing where your spouse is going to be, a majority of the week. So there's going to be some level of communication that need to be established, and trust come with it. So it's always my habit. Also, when I travel, I always tell, hey, I'm already arrived. And I'm checking in with my wife and my son. I know, especially if I'm in the East Coast, I'm going to be 3 hours ahead. If I don't have any conflicting, I always make it a habit, like if my wife driving my son to school, that's where I usually call them and check up on them, like how things going, praying for over my sons, and then throughout the day, when I lunch break, I usually try to call my wife, just like, hey, what's happening? How's it going? And then check in again in the evening. So make it like a habitual check-in, not try to check in, it's like communication, like, how things going, anything will happen, anything that want to talk about. That habit or culture or value or whatever you want to say, it's become embedded in our daily life.
Awesome. How did that, you transitioned from IBM at one point to Salesforce, or was there unless there was something in between, but how did the conversations go with those transitions? Because it sounds like the communication was always pretty solid, traveling a lot, having that. But how was the talk from the transition from IBM to Salesforce, or whatever came after IBM?
Yeah, so I'm not working for Salesforce. I implement Salesforce, but the company that I work for essentially have a local business model, so I don't require me to travel anymore. So obviously, it's just like it's great leap, knowing that I've been wanting to do that. Still love what I do. It's in the consultant fields. We don't have the the benefit of the traveling again. It's just a luxury. So, and given that my sons are going to be part of the adolescence age, where I want to be more presence and helping out. So that's an easy choice. When I say, like, I'm going to be leaving IBM. I know it's a bigger company, but I'm going to be working in a local consulting company. But I'm going to be more active on the day to day and presence here. As in the family.
Which I'm assuming your wife was all about, being having you home a little more and being a little bit more active in the family. So
correct, yes. Yeah. That way, then they're going to be able to tag team, right? Like for example, like if there's a day there's going to be in a meeting. So like I'm the one that will be, hey, can you drop our sons to school or pick them up or thing like that? So it become like a tag team rather than like a single parent majority of the week. Yeah. For her in this case. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like then that the communication side had been built up for quite a while, so that when it came time to say, hey, I want to buy 348 units, it wasn't like, are you nuts? Like, no, like we already have this trust. We already know each other. We already understand, how we're thinking. We already have the communication. If this is what he wants, then I trust the route that he's going.
Yep.
Does that sound accurate, or am I inflating it?
That's pretty accurate. I think it's more like for this belief is coming from us, like between us, because we are the first time we're going to buying it. Like, wait a minute, are we? This is too soon, too big, or what if, right? What if? But we just basically we obviously with our coach, we talk about it. Sounds like pretty solid deals, and then we decided to move forward there. At least both of us already convinced enough from our coach and talking with each other that this is a good, the good direction we want to go.
Awesome. Yeah, we. I think that you mentioned the power of proximity earlier in the conversation, and I think that makes a huge difference in both. My wife and I didn't quite understand it. We've been, both of us, kind of like we are our group for the most part. We travel around the world all over the place with the military and doing all this stuff. So it was like it's just her and I, right? Her and I against the world type of stuff, right? And then once I got into like the Woodborough Prophets community with Jake and Gino and everything, it was we actually flew out to Florida to sit down and have lunch with Gino, because we wanted to, like, actually know that these people are real. Like, sure, I listen to you guys on a podcast. Sure, you guys tell me you've read, you've wrote books and that you've done these, but I need to sit down with this person. I need to like know who they are, right? So my wife and I, and at the time we only had one kid, but he was, I mean, very little, basically a baby. We fly out to Florida, sit down, have lunch with him, and then it changed my world after that, right? Because it was like, well, now I'm around these people that do this, right? That know what it's like, what it means to, buy apartment buildings. So now I can communicate with them, understand what they're saying, understand their thoughts. Raquel started to really understand why it was that we, we're getting involved in these things. And now I'm in other masterminds that are like the same thing, just larger business masterminds that are just like, man, this is like life changing. And that's part of the reason as well, like that I think about like this podcast, right? Like if I could surround myself with other dads who are doing this stuff, like how much better can I be by bringing solid dads into my proximity? How much better of a dad can I be? How much better of a business operator can I be with my kids if I surround myself by folks like you who are doing this, and why I'm doing these interviews? Like it just, to me, it makes a lot of sense to surround yourself. I'll pause there because I have a tendency to talk a lot, but and pass it over to you for your thoughts.
No, I completely agree, though. Especially, this is very true for men, right? Because everybody feel like men is like an island. Like I'm the leader of the family. I have to solve everything by myself. And we forgot that, we need to build for our community. That's who we are, right? We need to get people that surrounding ourselves, because we're not the only person that having that some problem. I mean, like if I'm struggling, as a father, as a husband, as an entrepreneur, and as a W-2 worker, there's somebody else that's gonna have experienced the same challenge that I can learn from it. And I'm really grateful that you actually, having this podcast, because people can learn from each other and grow from it. You don't necessarily have to take every single value out of that, but filter out what's adaptable for you, what works for you, and adapt to it and grow from it.
Yep. One thing we used to say in the military is chew the meat and spit out the bones, right? Like you don't have to eat the whole rack of ribs. Like you don't eat the whole rack of ribs. You spit out the bones. You don't eat that. So if you're listening to this and you're like, man, that spoke to me like right down to my core, like, okay, great. Take that, move on. If something else I say, if you're not a Christian and we start talking about Christianity, well, maybe that's not, hopefully you listen to that a little bit more and then we could talk to you about that too. But if that's not your thing, then chew the meat, spit out the bones, like move on, learn from what you're going to learn from. Not everybody, to me, that's one of the benefits about GoBundance. One of the other masterminds I'm in is we're around all sorts of people from all sorts of different, what's the word I'm looking for? Industries. So if I'm just in a multifamily group, which I love, then all I'm hearing about is multifamily stuff. But I might hear something from somebody who's in some other industry that runs a roofing company. And I may talk to my buddy Camille, who was on the podcast recently. I may talk to him because he does industrial roofing. Okay, well, he may be doing something in that business that would be amazing for me to implement in my business. But if I'm not thinking about it, if I'm not asking questions and being around it, then I'm going to lose out on it. It's never going to happen. So definitely surround yourself, with more people and that are stronger than you in various different ways of life. So, the Bible even tells us to have many advisors. So, definitely go forth and do that. So, but what's the plan? Do you have one, or let me rephrase? Have you included your son at all in any of the business side of the house for the real estate?
I did actually. Did a property visit a couple times. I included him, in nice. There. He actually attended a boot camp with Jake and Gina, also nice. a couple boot camps with them. In fact, this is a funny thing is that, about 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, it was 2 years ago, that he was asking for buying a Vans shoes. And I asked him, like, I'm going to buy you the Vans shoes, but I want you to reach that for teens for me. He was only like 11 years old or 12 years old. He's not even a teenager yet. And I want him to read that book. When he has a motivation, he read it chapter to chapter over the weekend. Never happened before. And he's very excited. And then I asked him, I tested him, like, so what is your what did you learn from the book? And he was able to like, oh yeah, asset and liability. Well, explain to me what is asset and what's liability. Well, asset
Mhm.
means to put money in your pocket. A liability takes that the money out of your pocket. Then how are you going to do it? Well, we need to invest in asset. And that's how I will be able to engage in him and then explain to him and then start opening up, about all this possibility. And then he realized and he told me that recently, like that I don't think I'm going to be able to become like an active, investor, like what you and Mom did. He said, okay, if I'm going to be a passive investor, it's like, yeah, it's like, that's fine. What do you
Mhm.
want to be, what are you interested in? And start looking into all the possibility. And then, I think it's part of the like engaging, like to show him like what's possible out there. It doesn't have to be following like our footstep.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad that he was able to engage in like an entrepreneurship journey, and then what he want to do in a conversation, as
Nice.
we engage. Yeah.
What did he have ideas of what he actually wants to do?
Well, being a teenager, he always keep changing though. I mean,
Of course.
there are one time that
Yeah.
you want to do. I mean, right now, he's interested in doing videos. Called he's helping in the church and as a volunteers, and also start doing some for people from different mastermind I'm part of.
Mhm.
But now it's also like, you know what? That's good. I want to learn. Maybe I'm going to do like, a little bit of, side hustle, like dog sitting or house sitting a little bit so I can some extra income so I can, invest in one of your deals eventually.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, my nephew, I got him to invest in one of my deals. It was $20, right? I don't remember how old he was when he did it, but he he gave $20 to his mom, sent it to me, and I don't know, Venmo or Zelle or whatever it was, and then I invested it into one of my deals, so that way he could learn. And I've talked to him about how the deal went and where the deal goes, and just him thinking about it, because I did the same thing for him. I bought him Rich Dad Poor Dad for teenagers, and I think he was probably, I guess at the time, maybe it was like 3-4 years ago. He's probably about the same age as your son, and so that got the thought process going. And now he's just turned 16, and he just went and got his first job. And I sent him a message. I said, "Hey, I'm glad you're getting a job. Let me know if you want to start thinking outside the box. Because I don't obviously have access to him every day. He lives up in New York. I live down in Florida. But it was like, what if you want to jump on a call? Let's chat about it, right? Like, let's figure out what interests you, because he's the one that like he just completely soaked in. Same thing as with your son, with Jeremiah. Like he just like read that thing cover to cover, like was ready to go. Like I like this. This is great. It gets me thinking. So I look forward to continuing to engage with him, because he wants to come up with some ideas. So I even talked to some other folks inside of the mastermind to say, hey, what would you do with your teenage son to get him involved in X, Y, or Z? And of course the normal, which I can't say I honestly was thinking about when they said it, but once it was said, it was like, well, duh, like starting a lawn mowing business, starting a shoveling business for up there, right? So for them, like maybe a normal service care business, right? Home care business. Like I'm going to help with your lawn mowing in the summer and your shoveling in the winter, and have contracts set up and do the whole thing, and create an actual business out of this stuff.
Yep.
So, but to your point, like it doesn't have to be the same path that you're on or the same path we're on, as long as they're thinking about those things to get to grow. And I think that's I think you're, if I were to guess by the sounds of things, is you're instilling that same discipline and structure that was instilled to you onto your son, especially if he's hearing that. So what have you done recently to kind of keep that those ideas and thoughts flowing? I'm pretty sure we're about to have a visitor. Yep, we are. What's up? This is actually my niece. Say hi. Say hola. Hey, having fun? Yep. Just wanted to come and say hi, Tio. Te amo. So yeah, that's my brother-in-law's little girl. One of his. So he has 2 girls and a little boy, and we have 2 boys and a little girl. So the 6 of them running around this house all the time. Well, the 5 of
That's
them.
awesome.
My little girl doesn't run, but the 5 of them in this house. I mean, or 6 of them in the house. They just anytime we want to go out to dinner together, it's like, well, table for 10, please. Like And really, it's 11 because we have an au pair. So we're like, can I get a table for 11, please? But like they're mind boggled. But
Yeah.
no, I forgot what I was asking right before the cute interruption came in.
I also forgot, to be honest.
No problem. Yeah, but yeah, I think we were talking about. What have you been doing to kind of keep that engagement going, or what is your thoughts if it was recent to keep the engagement going with the? Because like you said, I mean, teenage boy, like it's gonna ping ping ping. I certainly remember being a 15-year-old boy, and it's
I think more than just the idea of becoming like an entrepreneur or making monies, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to instill like the sense of purpose, right? And I think he got it, because now instead of just like making money, he's just like earn a living. He find like it's a sense of purpose. Like like I previously mentioned, that we just come back from a mission trip. He just opening up eyes for him, and when he went to the remote islands, like kids just a little bit younger than him, it's maybe like 8, 9 years old. They don't even know their age, just because they basically they don't have enough education. The whole island, and they're going to elementary school just like for 2 hours every day, and that's pretty much what they got. Imagine like you got a 6 years to graduate for elementary school, and then how long is it going to take you when you go to school every day for 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
But that kind of thing, he just opened up his eyes, especially like how can we help them more, right? I think that burned him more desire, like I can
That's
do
awesome.
better, so I can continue with my entrepreneurial journey, so I can bless other people instead of just like, hey, I'm going to become rich and wealthy and then live off passive income and so forth, retire early.
Yeah, that's
so that kind of thing, that I want to guide him through that path. Like, hey, there's a sense of purpose that God already put in your life, that you can do something with your life. No matter what you do, there's something better, that a greater calling that you can do.
That is phenomenal. That's one thing that I'll say that I still struggle with a little bit personally is I was never an entrepreneurial type of person, or I was, and I never applied it in an entrepreneurial way because I didn't know that's what it was. But now I start to focus a lot on, okay, how do I get my kids to know about finances better than I did? How do I get them to understand these things? But going back to that purpose, I think is huge. I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. Recently, actually, I think it was earlier today, I was listening to Ryan Pineda interviewing. Oh, I can't remember the guy's name. It's going to drive me nuts. He used to be part of Dave Ramsey's group. Anyways, so he was doing an interview with him and talking about how important it was to wherever your passion is, like wherever God has given you a talent, obviously to use those talents properly, right? And then in the direction that you're being drawn to, right? So, I mean, Dave Ramsey is one of those guys that he's got a talent to be able to teach people very well, and he teaches people about financial freedom. Anybody and everybody about financial freedom. Ryan Pineda, the way he retargeted it was, okay, well, I'm going after entrepreneurs to help them learn a little bit more about God, right? So he is very strong in the entrepreneur space. But he's also a Christian who believes that he should be reaching out to as many people as possible. So it's like, okay, well, let me reach out to that community I'm already a part of, that I'm already strong in, and give back in a way that God would want me to do. And it was speaking to me a lot more. Now here you are telling me again today, same daggum day, like talking about the passion and giving back. And it's something that I need to do a better job with my kids, is showing them that. And God has blessed us in ways that I would have never guessed would ever happen. And now what do we do with those blessings? I'd love to. So I'm saying all that to say, let's go back to the mission trip, right? Where you're like, what conversations were you able to have with him over there? What kind of conversations have you had since coming back that have been on those topics of giving back and really pulling that passion out of him?
So I think what happened was, when we arrived in one of the villages on the first day, we're trying to connect with the local kids, right? And the local people, obviously, as we are trying to set up for the event, for the medical services. All the young kids, like we're talking about 14, 15 years old, including him, trying to
Mhm.
engage with the little one over there, maybe like 9, 10 years old in terms of the age, trying to connect with them. Obviously, there's some language barrier to begin with. They're really fluent in Bahasa from people or kids that are coming from the United States, even though they're Indonesian, was born in the US. But they just realized like there's a lot of gap. And then one thing that they finally were able to engage, like, hey, let's play soccer, because almost everybody's
Mhm.
wearing a soccer jersey over there. It's like, let's play soccer. And to their surprise, they only have one soccer ball for the whole village. And for them, it's like, wait a minute. I mean, he was looking at himself like, I got at least about 4 different balls here. I got
Yeah.
volleyball, I got soccer, I got, you name it, basketball, and so forth, And they don't even have a ball. They only have a single ball for the whole village. Like, that's such a privilege. This is just like, it's just a very disadvantage for them. They're like growing up, they don't have an education. They don't really have any access to medicine from the medical services, right?
Mhm.
And then they don't really expose to what the world is out there for them.
Yeah.
Because I tell them like, yeah, for them, because they don't really care about their age, because they see living just like by opening up their eyes. The moment they open up
Mhm.
their eyes, I'm still breathing. That's life to me. And I close my eyes, I died, and that's the end of it. Because there's no really hope or anything outside there. That's the reason why we want to engage with them, and that there's hope, right, in Jesus Christ through a
Mhm.
gospel. And so they can know that there's a purpose also, that God created them for a reason, right? And it just clicked to him, like, maybe there's something. That's the reason I also, when I go to mission trip, that, I find that, there's a purpose, that's something that greater than just like me just going to the trip, feel like adventurous, but
Mhm.
there's something I can do more to connect and impacting the people over there. And one thing that's really cool about that one too, on one of the trip from the one island to another island, though, we actually have to, our original boat got stopped because it overheated in the middle of
Huh.
the channel. We
Yeah.
have to call a different boat that's actually a speedboat, a faster boat, to make up the time. And in the boats, actually, there's a girl that came in the part of the boat going to the direction of the island that we're heading. And she actually, I don't know how, the girl is actually DMing my son through Instagram.
Nice.
And then she said, like, this is up to the crusade, by the way. He said, like, what you guys did is pretty cool. I wish that one day that, what you guys did through crusade, through medical services. I'm one of the local pastor's daughter who hosted your crusade. I hope that one day I can bring impact to my village and all other islands, like what you guys did. And for him, that just come to realization, like a small little thing that we did, it's bring an impact to a larger scale, not
Mhm.
just for the people that he touched or got touched on that day, but also to the impact for the next generation, which is in this case the local pastor's daughter. That's
Yeah.
very impactful.
That's
So she
awesome.
just said, like, you know what? There's something I can do more, and he actually looking forward for next year's trip already, even though he
Nice.
haven't been announced yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So, have you then included some of those conversations, like at the dinner table, or at like I say at the dinner table, like we actually use a dinner table. Like dinner at my house is hectic, so I don't know about at your house, but but like sitting down at the proverbial dinner table, like are those conversations that still come up since having that? Like, what are your plans with this? What are your plans with that? As far as giving back?
Yeah, we'll still help. I'm still guiding him toward that. I think
Mm-hmm.
the way he see it is not like a long term, because we've
Yep.
been at this point right now. What he's thinking, like, I need to recruit as many people, my friend especially, to
Yep.
get involved to
Yep.
the next year trip to begin with. I think that's the intention, is going to be like recruiting people first. I already start telling him, like, hey, maybe you need to you know start bringing soccer ball to every trip, to every island that we're going to visit it. A small little thing, right? Because that kind of, through sports, you can engage people with sports. Now we're just
Oh,
not
for
just
sure.
playing sport with them, but you tell a story like, hey, just like the soccer ball, when you play it, your intention, your purpose is to score a goal. Your life will also have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find it yourself. How are you going to find it? It's not just like playing soccer and keep passing at each other, but you're trying to score the goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened in your life. I've started to planting a seed in his life. Like, there's many different ways to deeper level than just like engage with people at the superficial, but going deeper and guide them to say they can see it by removing themselves out of the box, so they can see themselves from outside the box in.
No, I've got another visitor. Come here. Oh, she looks sad. This is the other niece. What's up? You want to say hi? Oh, say hi. You don't want to say hi? What'd you do to your finger? Did you cut your finger? Yeah, you got an owie? Me too, look. We're matching. And that's the other niece. Hasta luego. It's one thing that I try to tell people on the military side of the house is there's so many things that the military has taught us that we can use outside of the military that people don't really think about. And as you were saying all that, I'm thinking to myself, man, just like if later on we're just having this conversation with him, just be like, hey, if he decides to go to entrepreneurship side of the house, if he decides to go down real estate side of the house, one thing that we're always taught is we're not asking for investments, we're giving an opportunity, right? And when you're giving an opportunity to somebody to be able to invest, like you're talking to them as if like this is a great opportunity. This is something that you could do. And now he's out there trying to recruit folks to be able to go to the next event, which is like I'm giving you an opportunity to like completely change your life by changing somebody else's life. Like you're going to make a massive difference, which honestly it like correlates perfectly with the real estate side of the house. Like in that he would be going out, or if we're doing syndication, you and I are going out trying to find investors that are going to like, we want to impact your life as an investor, and in return you're going to be able to impact my life. You're going to be able to impact the lives of all the people that are living inside of our apartment buildings. And like what better way to do this? Like that's why capitalism is so amazing. Free market capitalism is so amazing, is we can make a huge difference in our life. That's why going on these missions trips is so amazing, is we get to make a massive impact in people's lives. And we've got right now at my church, everybody's coming back from their the summer's mission trips and all that type of stuff. Yep. And there's been a lot of talk about like, man, I think I changed my life more than I changed anybody else's life. And like I've done a few different mission trips, and by far like you come back with such a different mindset, such a different thought process. And it's, to me, is the reason I was asking if you have those conversations. For me, it's so easy to just get right back into the normal bits of our life, to get right back in and completely forget all of those experiences, completely forget all that stuff until one picture pops up and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that time that I played with that soccer ball. Oh, that was the only soccer ball they had. And that's it. But if we constantly engage that portion of our brain, like, man, I would just imagine that it's going to be a lot, but hopefully I could do that with my boys, is to keep those things on a forefront. Yeah, that's why I was asking if you had a plan or what you were doing.
No, definitely. It's always going to be an ongoing conversation though, because when he went to the trip though, the one of the lead pastors already tell him like, hey, you're going over there, as a soldier of Christ, right? You're coming with the mindset to serve. You're not coming over there as a consumer. Like, this is not a vacation for you guys. You come over there to serve, right? So they kind of a soldier chip is what we call embedded in them. So I keep telling him like, you got to put embedded that soldier chip in you, and then continue that, because you don't want to fall back into all your routinism and then go back like, hey, yeah, it was a good experience. So what? You gotta, if you really, really desire that to bring more people after what you just said, like, impacting you, and then you feel that it can be impacting them, start planting a seed. And it's not going to be happening like only one time, like, hey, you need to go. You need to draw a picture of, why they need to go, right? Then you need to keep plugging in and do it yourself. You need yourself to be constantly ready. So he been talking to our pastors too. It's like, hey, I think we need to send another team next year. The mission trip that we went was sponsored by our church in LA, and we're in San Francisco. So he'd been telling our pastor in San Francisco now, I think we need to send our team, and I'm ready to go also. If you really want to sponsor this, so he's trying to create, his own team in that way, forming his own team.
That's awesome.
With his friends too. Yep,
that's really cool. Is the plan to go back to the same place or somewhere else?
Yes, I think the way the mission, we call it Island Mission because we got a boats, actually 2 boats. One is just carrying all the human the persons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other was actually carrying the equipments with the truck. And the truck itself is a pickup truck that's actually modified. And the pickup truck we open up and we fold it, become like a stage. So it's pretty much remote. You couldn't go to any remote islands though for that reason. So yeah, that those 2 boats are still going to be the same area. They're the Christianity is all over there is only 0.04%. So there's a lot of unreached people that never heard about the gospel before.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that is going to bring a different level of impact for sure for him to be able to go back to the same place, see what has changed in that last year, be able to provide something that he saw they were missing, and see the joy on their face that, like, wow, we're actually providing something that they're missing. Not that the material things are the most important, but now when telling that story, that material thing, every time they see it, they're going to be able to connect it to whatever that story is that like you were saying, connecting that to their life and what that means for their life with Jesus. And I think that's a phenomenal thing.
One thing that I want to add, that one of this testimony though, because every time there's like a crusade that all the youths are being challenged to pray, during the altar call. There's one lady who's actually speaking to her, like, hey, I don't have anything, but I want Jesus, what you said about Jesus. I think he's the answer for everything that I need. And he was praying for that lady, and then he just like, the experience was so profound to him. So like, we live in the things of abundance. We in US, everything's always abundance. I mean, you don't, you got iPhone 1, and then next year you got another one, and you want to get another one. So this is people that live based on whatever they wear, whatever they have, it's pretty much whatever they own. And we're trying to find our satisfaction in our, consumerism or materials. I mean, and then you will never going to get fulfilled. And that's when those testimony coming from his mouth, it just, like, for me, it just like, I found it like very profound at his age. He found that, experience.
Yeah, for sure. That's and how relatable what you're saying. I mean, like, everything that we do right now is consumerism, and we all get caught up in it. I think from time to time, it's it's tough not to, right? It's very tough not to, because everything we see is always consumerism, comparing ourselves to somebody else, comparing ourselves to what they have. Why don't I have this? Why does my friend have this? Why does that have, like? And it just is mind-boggling. But when you get that experience and you see what no matter what somebody says about how terrible this country is, or how disparate the wage gaps are, and all the stuff, like, we have like, even the bottom 1%, the bottom 10% in our country are still doing, and I'm not saying that they're doing well comparatively to us or to something else. Like, there's always room for us to be able to get back in our country as well. But getting that perspective and understanding, man, like, what they would do with the money that it takes to buy this iPhone, like that, probably a year's worth of salary just to buy this iPhone, But man, there were times driving through Afghanistan, that people would come out of caves, right? We'd be driving out in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan, and people would come walking out of caves. That's where they live. That's all they know. That's all they've known their entire life. And you're like, man, what a blessing it is to have the things that we have, to walk into an air-conditioned house, to walk into a heated house in the winter, to have the things that we have, and like what perspective that gives. So good on you for bringing your son out there to see the other side and understand where that all comes from. I think that's a something that I hope sticks with him for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's go back to the business side of the house. You mentioned him trying to kind of figure out, Jeremiah trying to figure out it was Jeremiah, right? I want to make sure
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
But Jeremiah is trying to figure out the what he's able to do to give back. So obviously, right now he's kind of passionate about this. You guys just recently came back. How long ago was it that you came back from the mission trip?
That was like at the end of July, though. So it's still pretty fresh.
Yeah, pretty fresh. Yeah, for sure. So he's been back for a little over a month from that. So maybe not even enough time to really have the conversation, but he wants to invest passively. He wants to be a passive investor. What was it that he said that he like, or why, or did he not say that he wasn't sure he'd be able to do active like you and wanted to do passive instead?
So I think after being to a couple of boot camps and a couple of masterminds event, we just realized like the amount. He maybe get overwhelmed with the asset management, like everybody else. Like if you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
Then it could be overwhelming. Acquisition side, putting all the ducks in a row for when you're doing asset management could be very daunting. Given like forget about 300 units or anything like that. Even for 20 units, if you don't know what you don't know, then it could be overwhelming. So I think he just for him it's like, yeah, I don't think I can be very active. But who knows? Down the road, we're gonna see it like every business you're gonna do gonna be almost similar. He might change his mind. It's just like, he just basically, if you treat it like a business, not like a hobby, then you see that everything's almost similar in a way.
Have you included him in any of the underwriting that you've done, any of the, business meetings that you guys have had during the apartments?
So actually, he was 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? No, last year. Last year he was interning for Mike Taravella. I don't know if you know, he's one of the coach with Jake and Gino. He was actually interning for Mike Taravella though, so he was learning about underwriting. We also teach him about underwriting a little bit, but again, he wasn't really that much of interested in so much on the underwriting. It's going to be overwhelming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially if you're working with Mike, that could easily. Like I'm a pretty decent underwriter, and then you work with him, and he like the spreadsheets that he uses and everything. Like I've even I almost solely use the spreadsheet that he uses now, just because I love that spreadsheet. But it can be very overwhelming and very daunting. And like, whoa, I don't know about this, So, but yeah, that it can be something else. But yeah, like I try to bring my kids in on, they'll, like I told you before we started recording, and like anybody who's listened to more than one of these podcasts, the boys will come in randomly and just show up, and maybe they're listening to me chat with you, maybe they're listening to me talk about an apartment building. I've brought them up to, we've got an assisted living facility up in Atlanta, so I brought them up there and walked to that property and showed them what it's like up there doing all that. And so for me, constantly including them, and I think that's finding their niche. They're in general, not my kids. My kids are too young to find a niche necessarily in business at 8 years old, But finding their niche is going to just be, exposing them to all the different opportunities, and seeing what actually fits. Maybe he realizes, boy, I really love like the actual overarching business plan of how you guys run this thing, and I think I could do that in underwater basket weaving. I could make a business out of underwater basket weaving and run that, and whatever it is, the exposure, I think, is going to be huge. So I think it's awesome that he did some internship with Mike. That's phenomenal. What's next on the exposure list for him in business?
Well, I don't know. To be honest though, because given that I just want to got in because things keep changing. Given that he's a teenager, literally when I picked him up on Wednesday, just like, hey, my friend just told me about Rover. Like, what's Rover? It's like, oh, it's an app where you can do dog sitting and house sitting. It's like, that's pretty cool because I can do homework and still get paid. Like, really? Like, I want to try that one. Like, okay, all right. So I basically, I just want to get in and pretty much in the exploring what's out there, what's available out there, and then got him, and then to be the best is what he can be.
Yeah, awesome.
For the time being.
Yeah. I think you're, by the sounds of things, doing a pretty solid job. So, well done. I love hearing the stories and how it's all getting done. So, If you were to go back and correct, and maybe that's the wrong word, if you were to go back and whisper in your ear at some point something to say, hey, try doing this instead, when it comes to raising your son, what would you go back and whisper in your ear, 4 or 5, 10 years ago, whatever it is?
I think I would listen to him more and engage in conversation rather than driven by my emotion. Because many times it's just like jump into conclusion without asking why you're doing this, and then engage in conversation. Because we feel like that's the only. Sometimes we feel like that's the only way to do it without asking a reason. But as an adult, there are many different ways to do it. Maybe that's the reason behind it. Why? A kid doesn't want to do it. Maybe because he's timid. Maybe just his personality is not quite there yet, and maybe he's so afraid or scared to do it. And it's our job, especially me as a father, that I need to be able to guide him and navigate through that, that emotion with him, to take in. Maybe he was right. Maybe he has a right to be feared for whatever reason. Maybe he has a right to be scared for whatever reason. But it's my job as a dad that to be able to navigate him, so he can manage that emotion.
I love that. Yeah, the listening more and engaging more, I think, is something that I was told early on, and I'm very glad that I was told that early on. I still suck at it sometimes, but it's but man, I don't think that you can go wrong with that. I think would be extremely valuable advice to pass to yourself and anybody else. Just today, as you were saying that, it reminded me of we were doing some schoolwork with Adam, and he had to figure out which one of these 3 maps had the most detail in it, and it was actually of San Francisco, like the way the book had it broken down. It was like a zoomed out version where you could see some of California, some Oakland there, and some various different spots. And it zoomed into a little bit more of San Francisco, the actual Bay Area, and then it zoomed in even more on this subsection with some streets and everything. And the right answer, like there's more detail, like in the small zoomed in where you can actually see the individual roads and all this stuff. But he picked the one in the middle, and I was like, in my brain, I was like, how is that possibly more detail? And then I stopped myself. Literally, like I would imagine my face looked something like it just did a second ago. But I stopped myself and I said, let me ask what his thoughts were, right? Because what if my son was thinking, well, actually, this looks like more detail because I can see where the water actually comes in over here. I can see how this is over here, so I can understand where this actually fits inside of the states a little bit better. And like, if I don't understand his perspective, then I'm losing out on a majority of the education and conversation that I could be having. So I just stopped and had him explain where his brain was and how it was going. And then I was like, all right, now let's chat about what the book says is the right answer, because that's not always the right answer. But let's kind of go through this. So just today I was doing that same thing, like let's have this conversation. And to me, that's always important. My son's I've always told him. My dad told me when I was a kid that I would always ask why, and it would drive my dad's friends crazy. It would drive my dad crazy too, but he's the one who told me to do it, right? So, but he was like, "You tell them, that's how little boys learn," and that's the same thing I've passed on to my sons. Like, ask me why at every opportunity, because I'm a big proponent of asking why. Like, why is it that we're doing this instead of that? Because if this is only because this is what we've always done, then that's not a good reason. Like, and I need to know if that's the why. So it's I think that's valuable advice for sure. I'm
going to steal that from you then. In this case here, asking why.
Yes. Oh, I love asking why. And that might be one of the reasons I'm not in the military anymore, because the military is not a big fan of why. They're a big fan of yes sir, no sir, roger that sir. Like, where I'm like, but that doesn't make sense, and they're like, yeah, but you're gonna do it, and so it didn't seem to fit my lifestyle anymore. I was, but so with your wife, what kind of conversations have you had with your wife about whether it's difficult conversations, especially if they're difficult conversations, have you had with your wife about raising your kids? Where have you guys had disagreements, and how have you guys kind of worked through those disagreements in raising your son?
I think it's more so much on the the way we treat each other, right? Because pretty much, our kids, they they basically they just basically copy your behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can be paying more attention the way I respond, the way I talk, uh, to my wife, and the same thing with my wife talk to me. So I think it's being more mindful about that one in terms of like how we treat each other, because sometimes small little things can add up, and then before you know it, it got picked up,
Mm-hmm.
by our son because he just copied.
Yeah.
And sometimes the behavior that we don't like is actually we got nobody else to blame except when we look at ourselves in the mirror, it's ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that thing becoming always a reflection, and a constant reminder to each other, like how we gonna create a value in a family, in terms of respecting and communicating with each other in this case.
So have you guys had to kind of step on each other's toes in that sense? Like, hey, you're reflecting bad behavior for our son, and if so, how did those conversations kind of go?
It's on and off. It's not going to be like, hey, every Wednesday or schedule or something like that.
Of course, yeah.
It just happened. Like, hey, but I give credit to my wife, though. She's gracious enough that, like, and when she understands me well enough that, like, there's a good moment that can talk to me, that can speak to me, she'll, she used that opportunity to discuss, and I need to be gracious enough to see it again. It's like it's a valuable feedback that I have to reflect. The end of the day, what is the motivation, right? If I understand the motivation is not trying to make me look really bad, but it's just trying to make this family keep floating and then keep going and growing, then I need to take that feedback and grow out of that too. And sometimes it's pretty tough, pretty challenging, especially an ego, as a pride, as a man, as a husband, as a leader, whatever you want to call it, right? But that's if you see the intention and the motivation, then you gotta suck it up and then go from it.
One disagreement my wife and I had was it didn't take me long once we had kids, but before we had kids, we had talked about, like, I grew up in public school, she grew up in private school, and it was like, I told her there's no way. Like, I think that public school prepared me greatly for quote unquote the real world when I joined the military, right? I mean, I'd already been to parties with drugs. I'd already had a bunch of friends who'd gotten arrested for drinking. I'd already had, like, there wasn't much I had not been exposed to yet. So, I already knew some left and right lateral limits. I knew where I needed to go. It felt like it prepared me very well. My wife grew up in private school, completely different upbringing than I did. But I also grew up being able to be miles away from my house, literally miles away from my house as a 10, 11-year-old, just kind of running wild, doing whatever. That the typical latchkey kid in those times. Where she was not. She grew up in a larger city, where, like, you're not miles away from your house. That is not going to happen. Like, there are a lot more people in this neighborhood than where I grew up. So we had to have, and we still are having, a lot of conversations and trying to figure that out. But again, it started with the base of respect for each other, that got us to the point where it was easy for us to have this conversation. I did not agree with her at all as far as, like, the private school. The second we had a kid and I started looking at schools, I was like, nope, private school, you're totally right, Raquel. I am completely wrong. Like, there is no way I'm sending my kid to public school. And, like, what a world of difference. And if it wasn't for her exposure and having those conversations and being open to it, there's no way I would have ever done that. It's just like, nah, private or public school is just fine. But man, it's, but again, having that respect for each other and knowing, like, that you can go to each other and have those conversations, I think is by far the biggest, because it doesn't turn into a huge to do, because you guys have already established that we can have those conversations with each other. We can do those things. So, even if you, even without a specific example from either of us, it should be obvious. Have the solid, comfortable conversations with each other early and often, so that the hard, uncomfortable conversations can be had easily as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think creating a rule of engagement is also pretty crucial, right? In your
you mentioned that
relationship
earlier,
as
and I wanted to go
wife.
back to it. Yes, you mentioned ROE before, the rules of engagement. Talk to me about that.
So for us, like, even during our, when the beginning of when we got married and toward the end of our dating relationship, though, we started creating a rule of engagement. Like, number one, we settle up, we have a disagreement or conflict, we finish it up, and that's it. This is the end of the chapter. We're not going to even open it up. This is the closed book, pretty much. I mean, we've seen that so many couples that basically, when they open up a disagreement, argument, they just opening up all the past history, like the things that happened like many years ago, or even last week, thing like that. I think we becoming, we've seen enough that we figured out, like, rule of engagement, like, hey, when we have an argument, once we settle, this is the end of it. We're not going to bring it up again. I think that's pretty crucial for us, because otherwise we're going to bring it up to all, like, hey, your mom did this, your parent did this, my parent did this, and so forth. Like, hey, no, this is just us, right? We settle it down once for all, done, move on.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's extremely, man, that is one thing that I think is once you've established that it's over, then it's over. Like, be done with it. Why drag it out? Because there's always the you're upset at me because I did not do, and there's a wild example. This would never happen in real life, that I didn't unload the dishwasher in a timely manner or load the dishwasher properly, right? And all of a sudden, it turns into this huge conversation about what happened last year. And it's like, man, if you've had the conversation last year, it wouldn't be a huge deal right now because of the dishwasher. You have to get through those issues. And that's one thing that I, almost to a fault, have done with my wife, is if there is something there, I will pick and say, no, we are getting to the bottom of this so that we can call it good and be done with it. Otherwise, it's only going to swell up inside of each other. Like, it's gonna be bothering me that I feel like it's still swelling up inside of you. It's gonna be swelling up inside of you, so you're gonna be angry at me. And then before you know it, I unloaded the dishwasher incorrectly. And by the way, you did a horrible job last year when you picked the kids up because of X, Y, and Z. Well, son of a gun, you should have told me last year. I've been doing the same thing for the last year, But have the conversation and get through it. Then once it's over, it's over. We don't hold grudges.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
Man.
Yep.
I love that. I think that's a solid rule of engagement for that. And I think that, honestly, it can go with any one of our relationships, in business relationships, in our kids, in relationship with our kids. Like, if there is a problem in the business relationship, talk about it talk about it with that person and make sure that it's out there in the open. My business partner Markion is huge on that. He talks about making sure that, like, if there is a problem, if something pops up, the first thing you need to do is get on a phone call with that person. Like, not a text message, not a Telegram message, get on a phone call. That's the only way you're going to be able to get to the bottom of what's going on, is to actually communicate what you're feeling, communicate what you're seeing, communicate what you're like. Otherwise, I can read a text message and I can read it 15 different ways. And it may not be meant any of those 15 ways. But if I get on a phone call, I can actually break through that and understand what it looks like.
No, absolutely. No. Yep. You're absolutely right.
Man, to me, the conversation with the wife is by far, again, God, wife, kids. So get those first two relationships right, and man, does that help out with the kid side of the house too. But
absolutely.
Hey, I want to ask if there's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just trying to see if there's anything else that you wanted to cover. Anything that I may have missed. What? Any thoughts that you've had throughout this? Questions you have for me? Anything?
No, nothing. No, I think, I like what you asked. You give permission to your son, to your kids, to ask, like, why, right? I think I'm going to start challenging my sons, like, hey, don't be afraid to ask me why.
Mm-hmm.
Even maybe give me a reasoning also why, I tell you to do that to begin with. Maybe it could be my stupid idea to begin with, and then nobody challenging that. I like that one though. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been huge for me with the boys. and I try to explain why I'm asking them certain things at the beginning too, like you just said, like, hey, I need you to do this, and rather than having to them to even have to ask why, I'll try to throw the why out at the beginning, so that they understand, and they're like, and I think that gives a little bit more buy-in for them as far as like, okay, now like because I know why, it's so much easier for me to just go do this for you, Dad. Like it allows them that opportunity to really connect with the reasons behind it, as opposed to just, well, I was told to do so, Roger that, sir, and then moving on, and I don't, that doesn't seem to work very well. So authoritarianism does work from time to time, but it's not great for good long-term lasting relationships. So
yeah, agreed.
But Hendra, I really appreciated our conversation. Thank you so very much for jumping on. I had an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I'm positive other folks are going to get something out of this. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, maybe they want to invest with you, maybe they want you to implement Salesforce for them, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you?
Yeah, so they can connect with me through my LinkedIn or my Facebook, Hendra Tambunan. And I'm going to give you my phone number also, 510-270-2920. We can put it in your podcast notes, and then
Yep.
be happy to help anywhere I can.
All right. Not very many people will throw their phone number out on a podcast, so good on you. That's awesome. So, all right. Well, the benefit is I only have like 10 listeners right now, so that's good. But
well, the funny thing is also sometimes I put the phone number and nobody reach out at all. I mean, they're missing out on that one too. So this is just I'm trying to help out each other pretty much.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I've put my phone number on multiple podcasts, and it's only a handful of people have ever reached out. I think it makes perfect sense to do it. We actually hired somebody at ADPI because he put his phone number on something, and we were able to reach out to him. Like, had a quick phone call, brought him in, and he's been phenomenal. I loved him. So, anyways, thank you so much again, Hendra. I greatly appreciate it. I look forward to hopefully meeting you in person, whether it's at a Jacob Gino event or somewhere else. But thank you for everything you're doing. Well done on bringing the kiddo out on a mission trip. I look forward to hearing about the next one where he, probably brings some soccer balls and some friends along with him. So, thank you for sharing with us, and we'll chat with you later.
Thank you for having me, Dan.